Hi everyone and welcome to today's webinar. Now you might have noticed in the chat that there was a question, observations are meaningful when? So keep popping your answers in there as we progress through the day, because it's something we'd really like you to keep in the front of your mind as we're going through today's session. So today's webinar, Children's Behaviour, What Do We Learn Through Observation, is about exploring the subject of children's behaviour and considering the ways our observations can contribute to the better outcomes for children, families and educators. And my name's Amelia Joyce and I'm from the Kids Matter team, and we'll be shortly joined by Michelle Scott, who's the Kids Matter facilitator, and we'll be guiding you through this discussion today. And I'm not sure how many of you have been to a Kids Matter Early Childhood webinar before, but welcome back if you're a regular. We haven't had one for a few months, so we're all very excited to be back here again today. And if you're new, we'll just go through a few little things to get started to help the session go as well. So there will be a few polls where we'll be asking your opinion about some important questions, and they'll pop up on your screen and we'll give you a heads up when that happens. There will also be opportunity to contribute some of your thoughts on our shared thinking blog too. And if you like Facebook and Twitter, we'll be there as well. So I'd just like to remind people that when we do invite you to go to the shared thinking blog, that your screen will open into a new tab. So to get back, you just need to click back on that tab, but we'll do that reminder again. And I think most of you have found the chat, so we can see that there's lots of people from all over Australia here today. But if chat isn't your thing, you can minimise the chat box by clicking that little triangle to the right hand border of the chat box. If there are any other technical issues, please ask in the chat too, and someone from the tech support will actually respond to you in private chat. How you participate is entirely up to you, but we ask that you do so in ways that keep yourself and others safe and respect privacy and confidentiality. Self-care is very important. In working with children and people, we do hear stories and witness or experience times that are stressful. So they can leave us with questions or facing difficult or uncomfortable emotions or thoughts. So if any of that happens today while you're experiencing the webinar, please just take care of yourself and maybe take a moment now to plan what you'll do if this does happen for you. Because Kids Matter is about mental health, it's about an early childhood mental health, so that incorporates the adults in early childhood as well. And for anyone who's not aware of what Kids Matter Early Childhood is, or you're new to the initiative, we're a mental health initiative that's nationally available across Australia, and we're funded by the Department of Health and Beyond Blue. And we work in partnership together with Beyond Blue, Early Childhood Australia and the Australian Psychological Society. So one more thing before we get going, and it's about self-care again, is that there's some information that you can click on to access some more information from Kids Matter Early Childhood. You'll also notice that an announcement has just popped up on the bottom of your screen. If you want to get rid of that at any stage, just click the little cross to the right. So it won't be long now and Michelle will be joining us. But just before I welcome Michelle to the screen, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that I'm on Kaurna land and pay my respects to the traditional custodians of this land. I'd also like to extend this acknowledgement to the traditional custodians of the many lands that we're all meeting on today. Please join me to pay respect to elders past, present and future, for they hold and share the culture, traditions, memories and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. As a way of undertaking your own acknowledgement of the land that you're on, I invite you to write the name of the country that you are on in the chat as well. Please feel free to use the chat as much or as little as you like. Pop any questions you have in there and we'll endeavour to respond to them today or some way into the future via Kids Matter Facebook blog or Twitter feed. You'll also notice throughout the day, we're really lucky today to have a number of the Kids Matter team as participants as well. So there'll be lots of people helping to generate some conversation across the chat feed. So without any further delay, I'd like to welcome Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Amelia. Thanks for that.
Here you are. You're up on screen now. So we did ask people about observations are meaningful when. Have you noticed anything in particular that people have been saying that
Yeah.
And she go, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk about observations giving a total picture of the child. I think we've all got the message that we're looking to observe the whole child. We've got people commenting about making sure that they're looking for non-verbal cues as well. So they can give us just as much information as the verbal cues. And talking about following up on children's interests and being able to plan for them better when taking meaningful observations. And I guess the other thing was that by meaningfully observing children, we're reducing the assumptions that we're making. We're actually finding out what could be going on, thinking a bit deeper about it. So, yeah, lots of great discussion in the chat.
Yeah, lots going on in there. Now, one thing that I understand that you think is really important about meaningful observations is it contributes to high quality care. And so you're going to start the conversation today talking about high quality care, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll hand it over to you and I'll pop back in a little bit. See ya.
Thanks, Amelia. Okay, so thanks for joining me today in our webinar. I look forward to having a chat with you. I guess this is something that I'm passionate about, is getting the best high quality care for kids. So I guess experiences in the early years have the potential to impact on a person's mental health over their whole lifetime. And early childhood services are in a unique position to positively impact children's mental health outcomes by providing that quality care. By simply coming to an early education and care setting, children may have opportunities to learn that may be different or may be complementary to those offered in their home environment. So some of the benefits of high quality care are being shown on your screen. If you have a think about how high quality care can benefit children or families and educators, and then tell us in the chat. While you do this, I'd like to share a short case study, which is a fictitious case study, with you to highlight the benefits of high quality care. So Sian is a great example of what high quality early education can provide to children. Sian was placed in out-of-home care at 8 months old, and her parents were largely absent due to drug addiction. Sian was left for long periods of time in her cot, and her needs were not met, and often sparingly after waiting for long periods of time. Sian didn't learn the essential attachment messages from an early age and did not trust adults to meet her needs. She had stopped asking for her needs to be met because she had actually come to know that by crying for them, it did no good. But the good news came to Sian when she was placed in out-of-home care and placed in a high-quality childcare service. Sian and other children can learn many things from high-quality care. So, for instance, Sian learned to develop secure relationships. And what we know is that once children can form one secure relationship or attachment, they can then go on to develop others throughout their life. And Sian formed trusting relationships where she could have her needs met in a timely manner and with 3 educators in her early education setting. So the other thing children learn is the ability to regulate their emotions. Sian learned how to comfort herself and regulate her emotions by having supportive educators give her the names for her emotions and to help her learn how to soothe herself. And we do know that children do need those adult relationships to help learn these kind of skills. So children and Sian learn the ability to ask for their needs to be met effectively. Sian learned that when she had a need, someone was there to meet that need. They fed her when she was hungry, they played with her, they delighted in her and cuddled her, and they were aware of how to promptly meet her needs. She actually began to cry to get her needs met, which was actually a positive sign because she didn't used to do that. So through warm and responsive relationships, children learn to value themselves, which leads to better outcomes for their sense of self. And parents can be supported to meet the needs of their children too through high quality care. Sian's foster carers were supported to understand and meet Sian's needs. Good communication was established between Sian's carers, and the educators and director were able to seek outside professional support in their community to add to the support that Sian's family were already receiving. And together they devised strategies to support Sian in her transition to childcare. So why is it important to identify children and families who are experiencing mental health difficulties? Well, when in early childhood services promote the value of seeking help and they're open to having conversations about mental health, then we're helping to reduce the stigma that can be attached to seeking help. We may be that important link that connects a family with challenges to the support in the community that they need. Many of us will be aware that identifying and supporting difficulties early can really make a big difference in parents wanting to seek help and in reducing difficulties for the children later on. When we provide secure relationships and connection to the community, we're also increasing the protective factors that may help a family or a child to bounce back from difficult times, or what we call building resilience. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that later. So how do we identify when someone is experiencing mental health difficulties? Well, we use our skills in observation and we try to form positive relationships so that we can be in the best position to empower and support. Here's a little bit more about how we can make quality observations from our clinical psychologist, Robin Dolby. We're going to go to a video with Robin, and if you've actually phoned in today, you won't hear the sound of this video on your phone, but you can read along with the transcript by clicking on the slide. There'll be a link to the transcript. It goes for about 45 seconds.
There's different kinds of observation to observe children's behaviour or to understand children's behaviour. I think observation that gives you a series of checklists and problems just makes everything feel heavier and takes your energy away about where you can go with this child. I think observations that document relationship are very valuable, in the sense that what I mean by that is that you look at how the child uses you as a resource. How free are they to come in and ask for help from you when they need help? Observations that help you to be able to see all the things that a child can do are very useful, because then you get the level that's the right starting level for a child. That's critical, because often I think when children have difficulties, we immediately think we have so much to teach them and they have so much to learn. And often what gets overlooked is the level to start at. So documentation which helps you to see what a child can do, then you know where to start, and it also brings you in good connection with the child.
So now we can see that what a great position we are in as early childhood professionals to make a difference. Let's look at what skills we can use to provide that high quality care. So our observations and insights will be key to what we plan for each child and the level of connection that we can form with them. When we use our skills to gain meaningful information from our observations, we are actually investing in the child's future. By picking up challenges early, we can put strategies in place to support their development. We have the potential to enhance their inclusion in our service also by noticing how they use different people and resources. We can then make adjustments to the environment and practices to promote further participation. So maybe you haven't considered this, but you can also enhance their experiences within their own family. Families may have stress about their concerns for their child, and they might be reduced when we offer a listening ear or a kind heart. We can help give meaning and understanding to the behaviours that families may struggle with. And this promotes empathy and understanding, which can also lead to parents being more able to support their child at home or to seek support rather than feeling disempowered by their frustrations. And more broadly speaking, we can actually change the mindsets about early childhood settings being a safe place to gain support when needed. If the community views early childhood settings as being supportive and empowering place where the needs can be identified early and support put into place, then together we can positively change the outcomes for more people in our society. So prior to this webinar, you were sent a fictitious case study of Michael to read over. You may have been able to read it while the curtain was down, or you may have been able to click on the link in the chat earlier on. We're going to be referring to Michael in several parts of our webinar today, and we have a slide that you can have a look over the case study while we're talking, in case you didn't quite get to read over it. So we're going to put up a poll now to get everyone thinking about what their first reaction to reading about Michael was. Now, not everyone will respond the same to information that they're given, and it's really helpful for us to think about our own thinking and to recognise how we usually approach observations. So, what are you thinking about Michael?
Okay, I'm just popping that poll up for us now, Michelle. Yeah, so it's interesting to really consider what our first thoughts are and what we do with those first thoughts as well. So there were lots of things, even details from Michael's relationships that popped up, but the interesting thing that I'm interested in seeing what's happening, and at the moment people are beginning to look at what Michael's behaviours were and strategies that people could use. That there's a sort of the clear winners. We'll give it a little bit longer for people to respond. But it's also interesting, there's been some great chat in the chat around what high quality care is and how it can improve relationships. And there were lots of things that were discussed around that. It's around providing relationships and teaching children how to be in relationships. It's an opportunity to be with children. It's also an opportunity to understand as well. So I'll just stop this poll now and we'll pop the results up for everyone to see. So what are your thoughts around what the results were, Michelle? Any comments?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. A lot of people were focusing on what strategies they might use. So I was thinking about his relationships with the staff and also thinking about his behaviours. And I guess it's not surprising that there's some other things that maybe don't always come to mind at first when we do our observation, but they're still very important to take into consideration so that we can get the best information that we can.
Okay, excellent. So I think you're going to talk about one of those really important things right now. So I'll pop out again and you keep talking. See you soon.
Thanks, Amelia. Okay, so many of you may be familiar with a Kids Matter chart that shows the risk and protective factors that can be operating in a person's life. So the slide is coming up that will show you what they are. And what we're doing is we're aiming to support as many protective factors that we can to help buffer a person when they face challenging circumstances in their life. Sometimes it can be helpful to think about the risk and protective factors that a person has in their life when we're trying to find out the best way to offer support. At times we can become overwhelmed with the challenge that we forget that there are strengths and protective factors that may be able to be utilised in putting in those supports. So for example, we may have little influence over what a child experiences in a home situation where the child has neglect, but we can definitely help build a number of protective factors into the child's experiences while they're at our early learning settings, such as building secure relationships for the child while they're in our care. And there are many adults who will reflect on how that one teacher made a huge difference in their life. So let's look at our case study, child named Michael. And what do you think the risk and protective factors are that are operating in his life? So by reading the case study, you might conclude that Michael has the following risk and protective factors. His risk factors might be that he had a recent separation of his parents. He may or may not be at socioeconomic disadvantage. Sometimes we have to make our best guess as to what we know, because sometimes families won't share everything that they know about children with us, but we just need to make our best guess. There may be a lack of connection to services for the family because no one has actually ever revealed that they are seeking any support. So that could also just be a private thing the family has kept to themselves. But there are some protective factors at play here too. So he appears to have warm and responsive relationships with his parents. So that tells us that he is capable of forming those secure attachments. He has connected to one educator named Annie, and he is meeting all of his developmental milestones. He shows interest in people and relations, and he generally has an easy temperament when he's not distressed about separation. So it may have surprised you to see some of those protective factors in Michael's life. There are a range of reasons why children behave in the way that they do, and many of them are not due to having a mental health difficulty. However, if children are showing emotional and behavioural difficulties, then making some careful observations, carers and educators can decide on the best way to support them. Recognising children with risk factors and providing support may prevent them from showing signs of mental health difficulties later in life. So again, we're getting in early and we're making a big difference. So building on the protective factors can also minimise children's risk of mental health difficulties. Now, there are some children who, despite having many risk factors, don't actually go on to develop emotional and behavioural difficulties because they have many protective factors that help them to cope with the challenges of life. However, there are also some children who have minimal risk factors, but they still go on to develop mental health difficulties. So being aware of the risk and protective factors for children's mental health can help staff to support those children who may be in need of further help. So we're going to use Michael as an example in how an educator might use the Beatles observation chart a little bit later. But first, I'd like to draw your attention and take you a little bit deeper in your thinking about why we use observation and how we can use it perhaps a little bit differently to give greater insights into behaviour. So I'd like to start with us sharing our thoughts about the following question on our blog. So the question is, what can you identify by observing carefully? So have a think and click on the link in the Shared Thinking blog to record your answer. This is a way that we can share our ideas and understanding with the Kids Matter community who couldn't make it here today. And I think Amelia's back.
Yes, I'm back. So remember everyone, when you click on the button to go to the Shared Thinking blog, you will be taken to another tab. And to get back to us so you can see us in the slides again, you just need to click the tab at the top of your screen that has, I think mine has children's behaviour at the top. So you'll see something like that with it. So there's lots of conversation around what the risk and protective factors are for Michael going on in the chat. Michelle, there is one that I thought you might like to comment on. Kate, she's written, I think the need behind the behaviour is different to the actual behaviour. What is the behaviour telling us, not just what the behaviour is?
Yeah, I think that's a really important message, and it's one that's key in our webinar today, is we want to get people to think about what is it that is the need that is communicating, that the child is communicating. So, yeah, so often we're looking at the behaviour because that might be the part that's most frustrating to us or that we think we need to address. But actually what we need to do is look underneath that behaviour and say, oh, what does the child need? How can we respond to that need in the best way? And often when we do respond to that need, the behaviours disappear or they get smaller because the child's having their needs met, so there's no need for that behaviour anymore.
And I find it interesting that sometimes quite different behaviours, almost the two extremes of behaviours that we can see, are often to achieve a similar need or the same need or are motivated by similar things. So I'm not sure how that's going. I might just duck over to see our Shared Thinking post myself shortly, and when I pop back I will let you know how that's going. So we can, I think we're going to talk a little bit more now about how we can look at the whole perspective using a really valuable Kids Matter resource. So I'll leave you to it.
Thanks, Amelia. Okay, so if you are a Kids Matter registered service, you may have been working through the Kids Matter professional learning videos, and if you are doing that, you'll notice that the Beatles chart is actually in component 3, and it is topics 2 and 3. So this is what the Beatles observation chart looks like. You can print it out, or you can write on it, or you can type it directly into a computer file or even into your iPad. So people are using the observation tools in lots of different ways. Some of them are typing directly into iPad, some of them are still using the printed out method. Anything is fine, and we've tried to cover all of those bases. There's also a few different layouts to suit different educator preferences as well. So we're going to be going over each of the key features in more detail later, but you may be wondering why we call it the Beatles chart, and I guess it's because it's an acronym for us to think about the following things. So it's B is for behaviour, E is for emotions, T is for thought, L is for learning, and S is for social relationships. So if we're looking at all of those things together, we're going to get a good holistic picture of the child. Now there's 2 pages to the Beatles chart, so yeah, it's always good to make sure that you're getting the whole picture there. And we're going to be talking a little bit further as to the practical ways that we can actually go over that as well. So the Beatles observation chart is a tool for observing children's behaviour and to consider what might be motivating the behaviour and how the behaviour influences areas of the children's life. The behaviour is an expression of a need or a response to a certain condition in the environment. And the Beatles chart helps us to think about behaviour and what could be motivating that behaviour so we can address the underlying needs, just as we were discussing before. It can help you to form individual support plans, and it's also a tool for educators to reflect on their own interactions with the child. There's space to further question aspects of the program and practices so that whether they are likely to support mental health and wellbeing. So some of the things that educators have said after using the Beatles chart is that it's assisted the staff to be more prepared to think about the potential causes and reasons for behaviour, to identify the strengths of the child. It can actually help to bring a positive perspective to reasons behind the behaviour. It can identify the strengths of the child. It can reflect about how they need to understand the child's world and to be with a child and not just what they need to do with that child. And it also helps to create the links and core ideas between systematic professional learning topics. So you can visit the blog Beatles Welcome for more examples of how educators have used the chart. If we're wanting to observe more and the quality of the relationships, then what might we be looking for? Well, those of us who've been working on early education sector for many years will have noticed that there were shifts in the focus of what we use to observe children. It's good to remember that many methods that have been used for years still have value in certain situations. However, we now see a shift in focusing our observation to include even more of the whole child, such as their spiritual development, which wasn't really focused on in previous decades. But observations were often quite checklist focused, and they were focused on skills and developmental achievements. And many of the practices were focused on behaviour management and getting children to behave, whereas now we try to look at children in terms of their needs. So when we're able to identify the need under the behaviour, we're supporting the children in a way that often leads to the behaviour disappearing or minimising. And this is because all behaviour serves a purpose. And many times children are showing a need through their behaviour, and they'll often get that need met, even if it's subconsciously, in any way that works, even if it means through getting a connection with their caregivers through negative behaviour. So when we're challenged by a child's behaviour, we need to ask ourselves the following things.
So Michelle, I've just popped back in again. So these 4 questions that you've popped up here, but I'll just run through those. I think your camera's having some issues, so we'll sort that out, and you can pop back with us shortly. So the 4 questions that we need to look at when we're observing are: what need could this child have? What are they feeling? How is my connection with them? And are there cultural considerations I may not be seeing? And I think this last specific question, Michelle and I had quite a lot of conversations around what cultural considerations mean. And cultural considerations, we all live within a cultural context, so it's important to look as deeply as possible around what sort of culture that we do live in within our wider community as well as our early childhood community. One of the factors that have influenced our thinking in early childhood is the large amount of research that we've now had done over the many years around how the brain develops. We now have lots of evidence that shows just how essential those secure and responsive relationships that children have with caregivers, how that actually affects the whole of child development. And every culture, and this ties to that question around what cultural considerations, but it's also worth noting that every culture on earth has a connection as a core need for human growth and development. And even though it's perhaps expressed in slightly different ways, it's still one of those essential elements to how we grow and develop and continue to thrive. We know that when children feel safe and secure emotionally, they're then able to learn and explore their environment and take on the new environment. So if a child is feeling high levels of stress, or they're stressed for long periods of day, then the ability to learn and explore is limited. The stress hormones that float around their bodies shut down the various parts, and I'm sure we've all heard of the flight, fright or freeze responses that we have, and that's a real tongue twister as well. So if we want children to be able to learn more at their optimal levels, it's important to have those intentionally warm, responsive relationships with them, and to aim to reduce the stress as much as possible in the environment. And that's the importance, and that's a connection, I think, that Michelle really wants to promote today around what high quality care can do to support this as well for children. We can help children feel secure by having that predictability through warm responses and routines in the day-to-day. And observing children, it can actually help us to adjust and create responses and routines that support them in those special ways too. And hello, Michelle, you're back. I'm trying to say your words as well as I
for that. Thank you for taking over.
That's all right. So I guess I'm really glad that it was on this slide, because this is one of my favourite slides in the presentation, I must admit. So this way, I think, because it's all about making the environment a safe place to live in, I guess. And so I'll leave you to talk about the high quality care and what we can do, because even in high quality care, children can still struggle with feeling insecure in their environment. So I'll let you help us, in your words, put on our best thinking caps to understand what is going on for each child through observation.
Thanks, Amelia.
You're welcome.
Okay, so the Beatles observation chart can do many things. It provides a framework for respectfully recording and discussing children's strengths, problem-solving issues, and exploring options and developing plans for support. So I just wanted to go over some of the practical ways that other services have been using the Beatles chart, because there's some great ways that we can use it. So first, it can be like the primary source of observation records for a child's own file, so you can keep track of their progress and evaluate the strategies that you've been putting in place. But secondly, it can also be used as a tool for educators to reflect about children and their own thinking about a situation that never actually gets put or attached to the child's file, but it's used for their own professional reflection. So this can either be done individually, where educators are asked to reflect about a child and bring that to discuss at a team meeting, or it can also be used for team reflections, where educators can learn from each other through their own observations of the same situation. A third way that it can be used is as a reflective tool to walk in the shoes of a parent. So this is one of our services actually used the Beatles chart for this purpose, and found that it opened their eyes to understanding where the parent was coming from and help them to build better communication and relationships with that parent just by walking in their shoes for a little while. It can also be used as a format to go through with the family meetings. So if you're wanting to bring your observations back to the family and talk to them, it's a really good format, because it's going to show you lots of the strengths. It's going to show families what you've been putting in place, and it's going to show them that you really care about their child and you've been thinking a lot about how to best support them. And then it can also be used to record important information that can be of great assistance to other professionals working with the child in the community. because it could give them insights into their way of being within the early childhood setting where they wouldn't actually be able to observe the child themselves. And it can also inform their professional judgment about ways to support and what to do next. So to give you a practical example of the Beatles chart, this is a Beatles chart that's been filled in about our case study called Michael. As you can see, there is a typed version and there's a handwritten version, just to remind you that there's two different ways of how you can complete it. Okay, so I'm just going to go through the Beatles chart now in different details. So you'll notice that up the top, there's got the place for you to write the child's name, their age, their date of the observation, and then there's a part that we talk about the child's strengths. So for Michael, the puzzles, he's got a strength with puzzles, he's got a good sense of humour, he's got good receptive language. So then you'll notice these boxes that are going throughout the tool. So the first box, we've got behaviours. So we want to talk about what is the child actually doing. This is a place for us to describe what's happening. So for Michael, we've put that he appears to be very distressed at drop-off times, and for some areas, some hours afterwards, he cries intermittently. So, so I guess if you're finding like it's a little bit tricky to fill in all of these boxes, I just also wanted to mention that you can skip ahead of the boxes if you're not sure what to do. The next box we've got is our emotions. So what might the child be feeling? So it's really good if we're actually in the business of helping children to regulate their own emotions and name their emotions. It's good for us to have a good repertoire of what names we can have used for emotions. And if you're a little bit short on those kind of names, you can get resources on the internet that can give you lists of names for emotions. But this is just a place for us to give our best guess of what the child might be feeling. So for Michael, we've put down that he's anxious, frightened, distressed, insecure, alone, unsafe, overwhelmed or confused. And it's often this will help us to have empathy for the child's emotions as well. So the next box along, we're talking about the thoughts that the child might have. Now, some children are going to be so young that they're not actually going to be able to express verbally what they're thinking. So, and that's okay. We just want to give it our best guess. So, some of these thoughts may be more adult than where the child's developmentally at, but it's actually about helping us to get into the mind of the child and walk into their shoes. So, for Michael, we've said that maybe he's thinking, where is my mum? Will she come back? Who will look after me? How will I get my needs met? These feelings feel really big. Why aren't they letting me go with my mum? And then Janet cares, but then she goes to the other kids. And I guess we put that one in there to get you thinking about how is the child experiencing the routine that you've put in place. So there might be a really good reason why Janet needs to go at 10 o'clock to be in the other room for the floating position, but how does Michael experience this? Is he going to feel more secure about that? And if there is something we can do about it, then by all means it will be really helpful to address that. So the next box we go to is learning. So what areas are being affected? So for example, if you're having difficulty concentrating. So for this one, we've put that although Michael is meeting all of his developmental milestones, all areas of his learning are affected by the strong feelings of distress, making it difficult for him to focus his attention and engage with tasks and others. His play is limited and his routines are affected, and also his confidence in navigating the environment is limited. And the next box we're going along to is his social relationships. So what areas are being affected? So Michael plays by himself until early afternoon. Social interactions with peers are not observed until the early afternoon. Now the other part here, and this is the strength that was put down, is that his responsive relationships. So Michael is learning to trust. He's learning to form attachments to adults that aren't his mum. And so, yeah, sometimes it's really good to think about where the child is at and what learning they're up to. So this is clearly a place where Michael is learning a new skill of being able to attach to other carers. And so it's not always going to be something negative, but there's a lot of positives that we want to be putting in here as well. When we go down to the next slide, this is where we look at pervasiveness, frequency and persistence. And this will give us even more clues. So pervasiveness is who is present when this is happening, where do these things occur, is it just in one setting or across multiple settings, and when do they happen, like the time of day. So for Michael and the case study here, we've recorded that who is present at the time is that there's 2 educators, his mum and other children, approximately 10 at drop-off and then 20 throughout the morning. And sometimes that can be helpful because it may be that the child's being overwhelmed by all the new people in the room. And so, you know, transitioning him into a room when it's at a quieter time can often help. We've also put that Michael's brother has been dropped off to the other room beforehand. Mum reports that when left with the babysitter each Friday night, Michael clings to his mother as she leaves for work, cries loudly, and this persists for an hour after she leaves. So this gives us another good clue that this isn't just happening at preschool, and this is probably more likely that this is an area for Michael to develop his skills in being able to separate from his primary carers in a way that he can soothe himself. So the next box down, we've got frequency. This might give you clues as to what the environment might be needing to change, if there's anything, any routine. It may also help you to realise that this is a difficulty that the child needs more strategies to cope with. So Michael comes in on a Monday and Tuesday and his behaviour happens on both days. It also happens on the Friday night with the babysitter. So it also gives you a bit of a clue as to how often and how much of Michael's week is being affected by this, which will then also influence how urgent the need is to be addressed. So the next box we're going to talk about is persistency and severity. So is this affecting him mildly, moderately, severely? Well, we've said that this has continued since Michael started preschool for the first time 6 weeks ago. It is moderate to severe because 2 half days of his preschool are affected significantly. And depending on whether it's mild, moderate or severe, it will help you to decide the urgency of seeking further support. So now we're going to go on to the second page of the Beatles chart. And this is a place, I think Amelia has mentioned to me that this is one of her favourite parts of the Beatles chart, so we may discuss that later. But this is a place for you to record your feelings. So this is how does this situation make you feel and what additional support might you need? So for Michael, this team has reflected, as a team, we discussed the following feelings. We were empathic, we were unsure how to best help him, we were sad, frustrated that what we were trying didn't seem to be helping significantly. We were also hopeful that we can support him and settle him in soon. But we were also anxious about the effect on everyone else in the room hearing his distress. And we decided that we needed to support each other in caring for him and facilitate breaks if another educator becomes too distressed. And we may need to formulate a support plan with the director and Michael's mum. So self-reflection is a really key tool for educator growth. And it's really good to consider what your own feelings and responses are being brought to the situation. Because the other thing is that by acknowledging your own feelings, it's good for your own mental health. If we're suppressing what we're feeling, then as we know, that can often lead to other difficulties. So having someone to talk to, even if you don't record it in the Beatles chart, is really important for your own mental health if there's a child that's really causing you some challenges and distress when you're supporting them. So again, just being aware of the audience of the Beatles chart will also help you to decide what information you record here. So what have other people noticed about this child? So this is, again, a place where you can record either your conversations with team members about what they've noticed, or this is a place where you can record your team reflections. And different set of eyes can bring clarity or even a new perspective. So this is what they've said about Michael. Michael enjoys puzzles, he is sensitive and relationship focused with educators when calm in the afternoon. Michael has age-appropriate developmental skills in language, fine motor, gross motor and cognitive areas. I guess that's important that we know that there's not likely to be something organic going on, but it's actually more likely that it's a skill that Michael is learning to develop. The next box down is where we can record the strategies that we've tried with the child, who implemented them and what was the outcome. And this is why the beta tool can also be helpful over time, because it's a record of the different things you have tried, and it also will show your progress, and you can use it to evaluate those strategies as well. So we're going to go into a little bit of detail here because we thought that separation distress is something that's very common for educators to face. So you may be able to gain some ideas about some strategies you can use in your service as well. So for Michael, a consistent, predictable drop-off routine has been used. So Mum gets in and she uses some of those sand timers and plays with Michael alongside Annie, the educator, until the sand runs out. That's really important because it's a very visual reminder to him of what's going on, and being that he's 2.5, he's not going to be able to have as many abstract thoughts, so actually being able to see the sand running out is going to really help support him in learning how to cope with Mum leaving. The Mum then tells Michael that she'll get him in the afternoon after outdoor play. She says goodbye and she leaves with a tearful face. Even if she's taking it, it's often really helpful for the child. If he can see that his mum's okay with him staying, then he will more likely to be okay with staying. We aim to have Michael transition from Mum to Annie every day to provide consistency. And I know many of the services I've spoken to definitely try to keep the same educators as consistently as possible because we know how much that contributes to children feeling secure. Educators help Michael by saying things like, I know you're missing Mummy, but you must be feeling a bit sad, or Mummy will be back here to pick you up soon or in the afternoon. I'm going to stay near you until you're feeling better. And then we name the emotions for him rather than trying to distract him away from his big feelings. And then for this team, they have said that this approach felt inspiring to some educators at first, but then they noticed a decrease in distress as they spoke. So the second last box that we're going down to are other factors to consider. And this is really important where cultural factors might be playing a role in the situation. Have there been any recent changes in the child's life or even at the service? So we know that children respond differently to big changes or adjustments in routine. And learning to cope with change is a skill that children can learn over time with the support of their carers. But it's also helps us to consider what other cultural perspectives or ways of being and doing that could be a factor here. And that's really going to be limited to each educator's understanding of the child and their family and their cultural background. But being curious about each child's family culture and their cultural background can bring up many new insights and options for support. So the important thing that we've noted down here is that Michael's dad left the family approximately 3 months prior to him starting at the centre. So that's going to be a really big change for a child to cope with, and we'll just put it down there because it could be something to consider. And then the last box that we're going to look at is what might you do next? So this is a place for you to record. Are you going to talk to a colleague? Are you going to talk to the director? Talk to the child's parent or carer? And what more information might I need to collect about this child? Pardon me. So we're going to continue to see Michael's mum at drop-off and pick-up times and talk about Michael's day and also any other support that can be offered within the community for the family with such recent changes. I know many of our Kids Matter services are really passionate about connecting families with the community services and support, and they're really good at building their relationships with the family so that they can be a place to offer those kind of support. So this, they're also going to speak with the director. They're going to continue to record their thoughts and observations to see if any patterns emerge. And the educators are going to continue to verbally reflect together and support each other in supporting Michael. Then to ask Mum if there are people that he does stay with without being distressed, because sometimes if there's some strengths there, we can build upon them, or we can maybe get some clues as to how we can make our environment more a welcoming place for him to repeat that skill of being able to separate without being distressed. And we're also going to consider making a visual timetable for Michael so that he can see clear, concrete home time as it approaches. And so some centres that I've seen do this basically take a picture of different times of the day, and they put a photo in a line from left to right of the routine of the room. And then as Michael goes through his day, you point to that timetable. Oh, look, it's morning tea time here, and he can make that connection that the next thing to happen may be, you know, story time or something like that. And, pardon me, at the end of the day, Michael can see there's a picture of him and his mum going home. So it can just help him to anticipate that there's still things that are coming throughout the day, but it will get to that time when he'll get to go home. And his mum will come to get him. So then the last thing was that they're going to review the progress in 2 weeks to consider if further support is needed. So all of this information does help us to identify options for responding to children, and it helps to clarify the urgency of seeking support, and it helps you to monitor the situation and strategies that you've already tried out.
Yes, thanks for that, Michelle. That's such a detailed description of what you've been able to pull out from the case study for Michael, and it's a great way to be able to break it down using the observation chart. And I really like that the last box as well as the first box about feelings, the last box where we can build in that review process as well, because especially in early childhood, children grow and develop and situations change so quickly. So it's important to keep that conversation going. We're going to watch a little video shortly about observations, and we've drawn on some footage that Catherine Hayden has provided for us around what she sees as the important aspects of observation and why it's essential in early childhood community. This will give Michelle a little bit of a chance to have a look at the great conversation that's been going on in the chat box as well. Michelle, there's been some reflective questions asked and some processes and discussion around when are we guessing how a child's feeling or thinking, or are we judging, or are we reflecting about those things? So that's one aspect that's come up through the conversation. Another part of it that has come up is looking at where our own biases and our assumptions come into it. And I guess that what it's really highlighted for me as you were reading and explaining the Beatles observation chart, but also with the conversation that's going on in the chat, is that the Beatles observation chart tool is a tool to actually help us to see that the child that we're being with and we're observing is actually so much more than the behaviour that we're seeing. So I'll just hand over to Catherine Hayden on video now for you all to have a look at, and we'll pop back at the end with Michelle explaining the next webinar.
An early childhood educator who has some concerns about a child's mental health needs to act. They need to think about what they're going to do in response to that. I think sometimes an educator might need to consider in the first place whether this is something of deep concern or whether this is something that's normal for a child. In the first instance, for educators, they need to collect more data. So the more they collect more information, do some more observation of the way that children are experiencing the program, to alert them to when those things might be occurring, how they're occurring, whether they're occurring at particular points in the program, to get more information that helps us build a bit of a picture about what we mean. Because with that information, then we're able to either talk to our colleagues about particular strategies. We might talk to a more experienced educator who has some ideas about this. We might speak to a family in relation to what we've noticed about this and to raise those concerns in sensitive ways. We also might at that point actually source some other professionals who can assist us with the thinking, because it's really important for educators to realise that they're not experts in everything. It's something that at times we need particular expertise to deal with something particularly, and we also know that the earlier we get onto some of those things, particularly say for example an anxiety, deep anxiety that children are experiencing, the sooner we can address some of those things and give the children strategies early on, we won't actually find that being a lasting issue for the rest of their lives.
Excellent. So there we go. There's the video. So Michelle, have you got any comments or anything that you'd like to make in regard to the video, or are you happy to jump on to talking about the next webinar, because we are running out of time? We've only got a few more minutes left. It's flowing today.
Great, yeah, thanks, Amelia. Well, I might go on to the webinar that was coming up in October. So I'm imagining that this webinar has already made you think a lot about what you're actually going to do with these observations when you've made them, and what options there are for providing support to those families and children that you're wanting to support. So in the next webinar, we're going to go into more depth about this. So we're going to discuss the strengths-based ways of having difficult conversations with families. We're going to discuss what can be behind parents being resistant to seeking support, and how can we be a bridge to services and helping them to seek that support if that's what they choose to do. We're also going to talk about the pros and cons of seeking out a diagnosis and ways to link services to families in your own community. Now, if you haven't already, you can register for this webinar by clicking the link on your slide or in the chat. And our webinars do have a limit, and last time we sold out quite a long time before the event. So we do advise getting in now to avoid disappointment. But yeah, I'd just like to thank you for discussing all of these things today. And Amelia, was there anything from the chat that you wanted to discuss that has come up?
I think before we do that, we might just pop the poll up, asking people what they think that they would like to do with the Beatles observation chart next. So I'm just going to start that poll so people can start completing it. And I guess the main thing that came up was that, when is it okay to, are we making assumptions that we shouldn't be making around feelings and thoughts that children are experiencing? And the other thing that was a big discussion point was around how do we capture children's voice in the best way, particularly if the non-verbal sort of way of capturing voice. So I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're really important things to address. So I'm going to start with the second one, is how do we capture children's voices? I think wherever we can capture children's voices, we should do so. So there's definitely plenty of places on that Beatles observation chart that you can record children's voices, you can record what they've said. It's basically really open-ended, so it gives you that flexibility. You can record exactly what the children's saying, or for younger children, there's places for you to guess, as we said. And I think, yeah, it is important to have a think about what lens we're bringing to our observations. Are we being biased in any way? Do we have, our own agenda or things like that? Ultimately, we're all going to be at different skill levels of being able to provide meaningful observations, and we're all on a journey of learning as well. So the observations you do today will not be as the same quality as the observations you do in 10 years' time, and I think it's really important to have, compassion for that. But that's also another place where you can, it's important to generate that conversation amongst educators, because we all learn from each other and we can all bring our own different perspectives to what's happening. So, yeah, definitely consider the whole child, consider your own biases, consider the child's voice. They're all really important things to reflect about.
And I suppose that feelings section, that's a place where we can reflect about what assumptions we might be making as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
We've got 60 seconds to go. So you can see the results that are up on the screen for the poll, and lots of people are excited to use the chart. And I just want to put it out there as well to remind people that your Kids Matter facilitator, if you're involved with a participating service, they're only a phone call, email or video conference away. So if you've got some of these really big questions around how you do your observations, particularly with a mental health lens, please get in contact with them because they love having those sort of conversations with people. So you can also continue the conversation on the Shared Thinking blog, via our Facebook page or Twitter. So we really encourage you to keep these conversations going because it's important to have. They're important discussions to be having, and it really does help us to understand that the children are much more than what we see, and there's a lot of they've got so many strengths, and I think that's something that I find really important with the Bettles observation chart is the strengths based of it. So it's 2 o'clock. Have you got a last 30-second word to say, Michelle, before we say goodbye so people can fill out the exit survey?
No, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for participating, and I really will enjoy to interact with any of the services that want to contact me with their questions or anything like that. But yeah, I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in October.
Excellent, thank you. So, well, Michelle and I will be popping off screen shortly, but we'll be keeping this survey open a little bit for you. Remember, if you have more than one person watching this webinar with you, make sure you write their name and their email address in the section that's available in the comments, because that way you'll get your certificates. So you will receive your certificates in about 5 days, and you'll also receive another email that has a link to notify you when the recording is available and all the additional resources. We've also, I'm just going to pop in the chat now a link to the case studies about Michael, but there's also one for Sian too, because Sian that Michelle spoke about earlier, and it's actually got a blank Beatles chart attached. So if you wanted to practice it just on your own or with your team, you can have a ready-made case study to try and complete the Beatles observation chart with. So have a great day, everyone, and thank you for coming, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.